say you're sorry.
Alright. I'm sorry.
When Breath of the Wild uprooted the Zelda series conventions in 2017 to make way for an open-world approach prioritizing freedom above all else, it was met with near universal praise and the highest sales in the franchise's history. Fast forward to today, a great rift in the fandom divides those who have embraced the newer Zeldas and those who prefer aspects of the classic games, with some fans calling for a return to form. When these desires reached the ears of producer Eiji Aonuma in 2023, he questioned what players could possibly want that was better than the modern style, chopping it up to nostalgia. He has also stated his intention for Breath of the Wild to serve as the template for future games, similar to what Ocarina of Time did, and this has been backed up by the two entries since, Tears of the Kingdom and Echoes of Wisdom. Based on the sentiments I've observed, however, I don't think this open-air formula has the lasting appeal Aonuma might have anticipated. I haven't touched Tears of the Kingdom since my last video on it and didn't buy Echoes of Wisdom, despite my lifelong adoration of this franchise, and I know others who are similarly apathetic. Now, I'm not going to tell anyone how to do their job, but it seems unwise to ignore the war happening within the player base even with the profitability of recent titles, and if there is any interest in mending that divide, the best source of inspiration would ironically be the very thing that prompted this series' reinvention. While Skyward Sword was critically acclaimed upon release for the Wii in 2011, general reception was and still is incredibly mixed. Much of the criticism targets the gimmicky motion controls, the annoying guide character Fi, and most importantly, an extremely linear structure that limits exploration and free agency, feedback that Aonuma took to heart. It was the fifth game adhering to what had become a predictable gameplay pattern utilizing technology that people were pretty burnt out of. Given the circumstances, I don't blame anybody for hating Skyward Sword. Heck, even I had hang-ups with it. However, times have changed, and in hindsight, I'm confident in attributing most of these poor reactions to bad timing on Nintendo's part. And if they are willing to reconsider their position on the future of Zelda, Skyward Sword possesses the specialties that older fans like myself now seem to miss. In order to understand the demand for reviving the classic formula, let me try and describe what made it great. The perceived linearity of old 3D Zelda is not some outdated restriction. It is a powerful structure which allows the designers to craft tailor-made adventures. Within that is a narrative presenting satisfying emotional peaks through memorable characters inhabiting a richly condensed world, along with a rewarding progression system as players acquire items and upgrades through incremental exploration and challenges testing action and puzzle-solving skills. It provided direction and purpose, and kept things interesting by gradually expanding and evolving the game's scope and complexity. For those missing the legend in Legend of Zelda, the bulk of Skyward Sword's content is tied to the main questline, making it a constant focus and priority. Cutscenes and conversations are abundant, with each moment building on what came before in proper cinematic fashion. Supplementing this is the exceptional characterizations of Link and Zelda. These two are sometimes criticized for lacking personality, but in Skyward Sword, they are quite expressive and reactive. Zelda is a feisty yet lovable sweetheart, and the intro takes the time to establish her and Link's close friendship before tasking us with saving her, giving the story real drama and motivation beyond the call of destiny. Girahim is an irresistibly captivating antagonist whose villainy is evident both on and off screen. Groose, for some reason, has a fully fleshed out arc, learning to outgrow his self-importance and find new purpose in a different yet equally heroic duty. Every named NPC, no matter how insignificant, has some eccentricity or uniqueness making interactions with them entertaining. Not everyone liked Skyward Sword's contributions to the series' mythology, but it at least tried to honor and add to the wider lore and timeline, which isn't typically a big priority for Nintendo, at least not lately. Breath of the Wild showed blatant disinterest in this side of the fandom beyond frivolous references, and its direct sequel couldn't even be bothered to stay consistent with the new canon. Between the messy continuity and non-sequential memories, these games' non-linear storytelling is so scrambled and negligent that any sense of pace, significance, or urgency is lost. Players are driven by their own whims way more than any questline. Many consider the ridiculous wealth of possibilities in recent titles as a positive evolution for the series, but from my perspective, this obsession with player freedom at the expense of logical game design is a major factor in Zelda's decline. The overwhelming potential of Breath of the Wild's and Tears of the Kingdom's abilities and physics permits bending the levels to our will, where just about any challenge can be tackled in lame or shambolic fashion, fostering a cheater's mentality that's always looking for ways around the intended experience rather than engaging with it, which bizarrely Aonuma seems to endorse. I don't know when we started applauding poor balancing as great design, but the novelty of breaking the game wears off fast once I realize my solutions are less indicative of my own cleverness and more so a consequence of overpowered mechanics and shoddy level design the devs either didn't care to make foolproof or deliberately made exploitable. All because freedom must take precedence over legitimate challenges, and on occasions where I succeed without realizing a designated answer, I can't even take pleasure in cheating. The constant menuing for exchanging equipment, using the map, cooking individual meals and elixirs, fusing materials, eating food, and replacing weapons becomes increasingly bothersome and absurd during combat. Instead of encouraging players to branch off into various strategies, the large array of viable options lets them settle on a small handful of effective techniques for a majority of their adventure, turning gameplay repetitive and boring. Why waste time experimenting when I've already found a better method? Breath of the Wild's tutorial on the Great Plateau works well precisely because it forces getting creative with fewer, lesser options. Limitations can be a very good thing. By contrast, Skyward Sword is so carefully planned out and thoroughly scripted. Every location, story sequence, character, side quest, item, ability, and puzzle are specially conceived with exact intent. While this undeniably restricts players from personalizing their experience, the inherent purposefulness creates a balanced, coherent, and generally well-organized quest despite some significant padding in the second half. The surface has almost no wasted space, and when areas are reused, the game tries to introduce something fresh along with them. The comparatively small selection of items and pouch size enables convenient inventory management without interrupting the flow. Dungeons used to be where The Legend of Zelda excelled, with intricate mazes or gauntlets about critical thinking and endurance. But Breath of the Wild's and Tears of the Kingdom's shrines might just be the most forgettable parts, with repeated, featureless theming and sloppy physics-based trials. Divine beasts and temples fare a bit better in this regard, but are still a far cry from Skyward Sword's offerings, which in my opinion boast the most unique and beautiful dungeons in the series, with impeccable theming, airtight structures, exciting action sequences, and clever, imaginative puzzles. The sheer quantity of amazing artwork here is insane. Similarly, the massive orchestral soundtrack individualizes each area and story beat. Skyward Sword's biggest point of contention is the motion controls. Whether on the Wii or Switch, I can definitely attest to the hardware's finickiness, which can be irritating with the game's heavy reliance on it. However, this vitriol does seem unfair. Motion input is just as valid as sticks or buttons, and for what it's worth, I think it was implemented in appropriate and fun ways. This type of control is natural for aiming, which the items take full advantage of, and the free-form movement of guiding the beetle and my Loftwing through the air or Link underwater nicely simulates the unsteadiness of flight and swimming. While sword fighting would have benefited from more depth than simple directional weaknesses, I find swinging a Wii Remote or Joy-Con more engaging than typical Zelda combat, partially because it actually corresponds to my movements, unlike Twilight Princess's glorified waggling. Maybe I'm just tired of video games that automate themselves, but I've come to value when controls try to immerse me with the action on screen, gimmicky or otherwise. Conveniently, for those who don't appreciate this, the HD version introduced a button-only setting that standardizes the controls as much as possible, most of which are surprisingly decent substitutions. So unless traditionalists can't handle flicking a stick to swing a sword or holding an extra button for camera input, there's little reason to reject the game for its controls now under this option. Zelda is no stranger to so-called guide characters, but Fi may be the ultimate example, as this is her literal role in the story. Look, I get it. No one likes having their intelligence insulted, but I respect this tremendous effort to ensure players don't get frustrated due to a lack of direction, because I'm one of those people who thrives off a bit of extra instruction. I just wish more of it was made optional for those who don't need it. While Fi's mandatory interruptions should have been minimized, I always understood my assignment thanks to her excellent guidance, and her heaps of additional information provides every opportunity to get the most out of my experience. Importantly, however, she's usually good at shutting up during the the critical parts. Yes, a livelier personality would have given her and Link's relationship greater emotional weight, and yeah, she does her job too well in some respects, but Fi is still the best demonstration of the benefits that this kind of character can bring to adventure games. Also, as the spirit of the Master Sword, I think her design is freaking cool. Hey, I can be shallow. I'll be honest, this video's title and thumbnail were mostly for me. It's strange to be positioning myself as a defender of Skyward Sword, since I, like many others, used to consider it a disappointment, and for the longest time I couldn't explain why. Nowadays, my thoughts are much clearer, both the good and the bad, which I look forward to sharing fully at some point. But for now, I figured that reminding people about this underrated installment was prudent given the state of the franchise. If anything, it's the good ideas here that ought to be recognized. I don't hate Nintendo, Aonuma, or anyone that dislikes the old conventions or loves modern Zelda. At the end of the day, Nintendo is a business pursuing what they believe their customers will buy, and after Skyward Sword's controversies, a course correction made sense. For better or worse, Aonuma and the Zelda team have historically been highly responsive to fan outcries, so who's to say they would never throw a bone to a Stone Age idiot like me? That said, I'm kind of indifferent to where the series goes from here. My bucket list of games to play is a bottomless well, and whenever I'm feeling nostalgic, I still have my 5 favorites to fall back on. So regardless of whether future installments will return to what made The Legend of Zelda so prolific, let this video serve as an invitation to give Skyward Sword another chance. It's far from the best execution of the classic formula and flawed in many ways, however its genius shines brighter than ever before, and to me, those strengths are the cure not just for modern Zelda, but mainstream adventure games period, and it could be for you as well.
Sword. So he can still be saved?